If you're like me and you're going to be league starting Druid tomorrow for the launch of Last of the Druids, today's video should give you some general tips to help you have as good a time as possible. Now don't worry, I know that a lot of you want to go in blind and have fun and figure things out on your own. This video isn't trying to spoil anything, it's just providing some very generic tips to try and make sure that you have as smooth a time as possible. Now I haven't played Druid, so any footage of the Druid that you're seeing is from Ziggy D's hands-on gameplay preview of the class. Excellent video, I'm sure you've all seen it, but if you haven't, that will be linked in the description. First tip, and I have a whole video on this, and that is to pay attention to your weapon and upgrade it regularly. The modifiers on your weapons, things like lightning damage, fire damage, cold damage, physical damage, these make a tremendous difference. The difference between a good and a bad weapon isn't necessarily just like dealing 50% more damage, it can be dealing 5 times more damage. So the number one thing, if you're playing especially a melee druid, is to pay attention to your weapon, but also pay attention to when new talisman base types become available. As you progress, you'll start finding different bases. So you'll go from like, I don't know, a primal talisman to like a wolf talisman, and that base damage will be a higher amount. So make sure that you are staying on top of your weapon upgrades. That is your number one priority. If you're going for a more caster route on the druid, then same thing is going to be very important with a staff, getting things like increased cold damage and increased spell damage. But the very, very big thing is going to be increased level of cold gems, for example, or fire gems if you're using the new volcano skill. If you're especially going hybrid, you're going to have to pay double attention to your weapons, but making sure you stay on top of those upgrades. Now, if you're playing an attack-based build, one thing to point out are additional extra things on top of your weapon. So if something like an iron ring early on, that 1 to 4 physical damage implicit is very, very, very impactful. I know it looks like a tiny amount. It is extremely impactful very early on. Another thing that's very impactful are gloves for attack-based builds with adds fire damage to attacks, lightning, physical, cold. These make a very, very big difference early on. Another thing that is applicable to all builds is to try and get some movement speed on boots as soon as possible. All right, so we covered some basics on damage. Let's just speak about some generic defensive stuff that you can do. One thing, energy shield bases very early on can be strong on all classes. Things that grant you just a small amount of energy shields. Something like this, you might not have 21 intelligence, but that 44 energy shield can be quite impactful. A simple helmet that grants a bit of energy shield can also be really, really nice. Then the other thing is to do with resistances during the campaign. The way I think about resistances, the idea is to, by the time you get to maps, try and have them as close to 75 as possible. But during the campaign, this is very hard. So for resistances in Act 1, what you should be looking out for is cold resistance on gear. Next is Act 2. At the start of Act 2, early on, what you're looking for is fire resistance on gear up until you get past the Halani gates. Once you get past here and then start traveling further into Act 2, you're going to be looking for lightning resistance. Act 3, you're mainly going to be looking for fire resistance. If you can get some chaos resistance, that's great. And then moving into Act 4, this is when you should just start broadening your resistances, try and keeping them a bit more balanced. And into the end game, this is when you should have more gear, so it should be easier to get higher resistances. But for Act 1, cold. Act 2, fire and lightning. Act 3, fire and chaos. The question is, where do you find items with resistances? One thing that is very helpful early on are charms. These you do find fairly regularly. You get one from the Freythorn quest in Act 1, and then you should start finding them as you progress. So keep these on hand early on. But then the other thing is to check vendors. Vendors are really strong in PoE 2. You can not only find really good defensive upgrades, but also weapon upgrades. Even here, you can see there's fire resistance. Down here, there's a nice rare chest with cold resistance and lightning resistance. Here, this has life. And these vendors, their inventories will partially reset every time you level up. So it can be worth going back to town to check these vendors when you level up if you are desperately looking for upgrades. Now, the other massively important defensive upgrade is that of flasks. Every few levels, a new flask type becomes available that provides a higher amount of life and mana recovery. You can usually buy these from vendors like Una. Una will sell these. The ones that sell the spellcaster stuff, they will sell Flasks. They should start dropping as well, but make sure you're paying attention to them. Try to also roll them with some good modifiers. More life recovery when used on low life, charges gains 0.15 charges per second. There's a lot of modifiers that make a big difference. And then another question is, how much life should I have? So my ballpark, when I'm in Act 1, I'm aiming for about 300 life. And from then on, I'm trying to stay at 300 life per act, but that is usually a little bit harder to do. So I normally say like Act 1, 300 life, and then 250 at least increase on top of that per act. Because we are playing new classes, it's very likely that you might want to test stuff and experiment and respec your tree, which costs gold. So I recommend not wasting too much gold on unnecessary things, because respecking points is not super cheap. As you can see, I'm level 50, I've got 14k, and each respec point is about 1,000. So be careful with your gold. Don't waste it on unnecessary things like gambling when your gear is already good. Try and save it for respecs. The next important tip is to do the league mechanic. This looks like it's going to be spitting out a lot of gear from these coffers, from the monsters, but also there are these little tables where you will be able to do some basic crafting. Over here we have a regal workbench. This allows you to effectively regal orb an item, turning it into a rare. And then we also have things like this exalted workbench. So if you're not doing the league mechanic, you're not only missing out on experience and gear drops, but also crafting. I'm super excited for this league mechanic and really encourage you to play with it as much as you can throughout the campaign. Also, thanks to Ziggy for all this footage. It looks so cool. I can't wait to play the Druid. Now, the next thing, very important for all characters, is to know your permanent buffs throughout the campaign. So know that by defeating this boss, I get this thing. But another layer of it, which is especially important if you're playing Druid, and you're going to be wanting to experiment with skill gems and support gems, is knowing when you can get guaranteed skill and support gems. I have this guide up on Mobalytics that shows you not only the location of your permanent buffs, but also very useful things like uncut support gems that you're going to be finding throughout the campaign. Also at the bottom, this has been updated for Act 4 and the interludes, and at the bottom there are some nice little cheat sheets. So you can see over here, I really need a support gem. I can get one from the Mud Burrow in Act 1. Now, another little tip for people who want to go maybe a little bit faster are some generic skills that are very strong in the first few areas. I'm sure we're all going to be wanting to stomp around with our bear and wolf, but certain skills like Contagion are really strong very early on, because this skill will affect a single enemy with a chaos debuff, and then when you kill that enemy, it'll spread throughout nearby enemies. Another one that is pretty popular is Frost Bomb. It has a fairly long delay, but it deals a good amount of damage and is very strong in the first few areas. I can just pop into Clearfell and show you what these look like. So this is Contagion. I affect that monster with it, and then nearby enemies are affected by it. Everything is dying too quickly. This is a terrible example. Wait, see if this one. Yeah, can you see it spreads? And it spreads throughout the pack. So this is very nice clear early on. Another one is this Frost Bomb, which you can kind of place ahead of you. It has a fairly long delay, but if you can time it right, deals a lot of damage early on. Although, that being said, I'm sure, like I said, we're all going to be playing like stompy, smashy bear skills, but this can be a bit of a help. Another last thing is, if you want to learn the campaign a little bit better, I do have these guides up that have very basic campaign layouts. I know people will see this and be like, why are you trying to get through the campaign so quickly? It's like the most fun part of the game. And I agree, it is actually the most fun part of the game, but there's something very satisfying about starting to learn layouts and understanding how areas work and being able to navigate them in a more structured way. There is also this wonderful video from Guy That Dies that he did with Crimson Cast, where they discuss the full campaign. They go through the campaign in about 4 hours and discuss each area as they go through it. A lot of people have been watching this and said it's an excellent video. Both of these people are awesome. So here's another video. I'll link this in the description for those of you who are interested. And then lastly, if you would like to learn the campaign on a much deeper level, you can join my campaign Codex Discord. I started this with Guitaraholic at the launch of Path of Exile 2 to discover the campaign, and this channel has just exploded. There's over 4,000 people in here. All the top speedrunners are part of it, discussing stuff to do with the game. So if you're looking for a community, you can join this one. I'll also link the description, my Discord, for people who want to join the Lolcohol Discord. But this is the one to check out if you want to learn the campaign as well as possible. So that's going to be it for this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe. If you have any other tips, leave it in the comments below. Don't forget to follow on Twitch as well. I'm going to be streaming tonight for the Game Awards. There is going to be a Path of Exile thing. You can also watch for 30 minutes to get a free MTX. And if you want to gift a sub, you can get an MTX as well. And of course, I will be live for the launch of Last of the Druids. I'm very excited, and I'm very, very certainly going to be going Druid as well with the rest of you. So hope this video helps. Have a wonderful day. Stay safe. Catch you in the next one, and bye-bye.